we make a start then? So I think one of the things that people really like, actually, especially on these kind of things, is to know a bit more about people's origin story. So perhaps we could start there, really.
Yeah, that's fine. My name is, first of all, I'd like to say thank you for inviting me to the podcast, which is a wonderful thing. So my name is Nick Regnier. I was born in France, in Nantes, which is a part of Brittany in France. And I was raised in a very nice, with my parents and, nice social class. And my dad was working as an engineer. So, they were working, and my mom was able to stay and looking after us. And I've got two brothers, so 3 children from my mom. So she made a choice. She wanted to stay at home and looking after us. And so my dad was the main person who was working. So it's just a typical French family.
Yeah.
You go and meet your grandparents over the weekends and all of that. And I was born with a hearing deficiency, and I mentioned that to you, disability, I would say. It's quite profound because, well, my mom had rubella when she was pregnant. So when she, when she was pregnant, there was the challenge. Me as a child, she realized that I wasn't hearing very well. So she had to put me through to sort of re-education to speak properly because I wasn't able to speak the words correctly. So it was quite a traumatic childhood at the start, because there was a point where my mom wasn't so sure if I was going to be able to go to a normal school or not.
Yeah.
So it was whether I was going to go to a normal school or disabled school. So there was a point where my mom asked, if she could read those words correctly on the card, and there were words with pictures. So you had a word car and with a picture of a car, and I had to say the word. But obviously these words were in French, but just to make it simple. So I would try and say those words correctly, but my mom kept on saying, no, that's not correct, that's not correct. And there was one point when it was quite poignant, because for me, I realized that my mom was having a nervous breakdown. And at one point, it was like a bit too much. She felt she was going to give up. And so I at that point, I almost felt, this is it. You got to, make a big decision here, because when she was having a nervous breakdown, she dropped the cards on the floor and she was crying hysterically.
Yeah. So
I picked all the cards up and I gave the cards to my mom, and I said to her, again. So I kind of gave her that spirit, and I didn't want to give up. I just wanted to carry on. So it was quite decisive moment, because I wanted to show her I can be in a normal school. I can be a normal kid, even though I've got a disability. So she saw in me that I didn't give up.
Yeah.
So and she felt, okay, she carried on. And then I was showing, I made it through. So then I had the opportunity to go to a normal school, and it was either a state school or private school, but my parents were able to afford a private school. So I was raised in a private school, Catholic school, and the teacher would put me in the front row, and then at the age of 5, I think it was 5 or 6, I had hearing aids.
Yeah.
And the first hearing aids were not fantastic. They were like analog hearing aids. You could hear the whistling from time to time with the feedback. So, but I got through all of that, and then I got myself into the routine, and I was doing exactly the same as all the other kids, and so I felt accepted, and you carry on, and then you become a teenager very quickly, and I saw some martial art movies, and one thing that struck me was Bruce Lee.
Yeah.
When I saw Bruce Lee films, I was like, unbelievable. I thought, this is amazing. So kind of pushed me to have this interest in martial arts, to look into it deeper. And I watched some movies like Jackie Chan films, Chinese martial art movies and all this lot. And then Jean-Claude Van Damme, and you've got Steven Seagal with Nico. And then I saw this first film with Steven Seagal and Nico, and I thought, what kind of martial art is this guy doing? Because it looks so destructive, so powerful. So someone, said to me, this is Aikido. I thought, wow, I'd like to learn Aikido. And it's not because Steven Seagal was doing Aikido, but I thought, it was something quite interesting.
Yeah.
I like this approach, different. It's not Chinese martial arts, it was different sort of a study. But in school, a friend of mine who was Vietnamese, and his dad was a Kung Fu teacher, but he was already retired.
Yeah.
And he was 75 years old. And he invited me to meet his dad. So I was only 15 years of age. And he was already doing things like, he was showing me his skills with 2 fingers. Only 2 fingers. He put them onto the floor. He lifts his whole body, his back straight, and lift his leg straight off the ground.
Yeah.
And yeah, such an amazing control. And I thought, my goodness me. And he was showing me some movements and everything. And I said, look, I was so impressed. I said, I'd love to learn Kung Fu. Could you teach me Kung Fu? He said, well, I'm too old now. I don't really want to be teaching again. And but he said, if I was young again, I would do Aikido. Okay. I said, really? Yes, Aikido, very, very good. He said, because the masters, they're like an egg. You can't grab them. They're always moving, and they get your balance, and they take the force of the other person, and they control you and put you on the floor. And so I thought that was quite intriguing what he was saying. So he said, really, you should be studying Aikido. Really, really good. So that's what I did. I just went to, I looked for an Aikido club in Nantes, and I found one. And it was on a Saturday morning, and there was a club not far from where my parents live. So it was like, you're young, so you pick up the first club that you see. So it was Aikikai, Aikido, sort of dojo. And it was from a federation with Tamura Sensei, which is the federation called FFAB.
Yeah.
You've got 2 different federations in France. You've got the FFAA, which is Christian Tissier's federation. So there were 2. You've got Tamura Federation and Christian Tissier. At that time, I did not know anything about Aikido. Yeah. I had no idea. So I thought, I went in and back into the lesson, and absolutely loved it. I thought the movement was very gracious, beautiful, and I became very eager and wanted to, do another session. And the more I was getting into it, the more I felt, this is so amazing. I really, really was loving it. And I was also a shy teenager. So when your confidence is not at its best, and you kind of see things that you learn to do a technique, or you learn to do a breakthrough, a forward breakthrough, backward breakthrough, and you do these things better than other people. Yeah. We don't have a disability, for example, who are normal people. And it gave me that boost in myself, because it made me realize, actually, I can do these things. I can be just like them. I can do normal things like any of the normal people. So Aikido kind of helped me mentally already. So I had this desire to do more. And I was actually studying catering. I did join a hospitality management school. And I had to go to Saint-Nazaire from Nantes, and it was like a 3-year studies. So on the weekend, I would go back and train on the Saturday to the same club. But during the week, I was very eager. I wanted to find another Aikido club. So there was another session on a Tuesday night, I think it was. And there was another teacher from same federation, Tamura Sensei. And it was, I can't remember the teacher's name because, you know, you're young, you just join in, you enroll. I had my martial art gi white belt, and I had my Aikido bokken and a jo. And these were the weapons. They're not like Iwama weapons, because I didn't even know Iwama then. So they were kind of a very cheap bokken and a jo, very lightweight. But I was loving the sessions, and it was really, really helping me. And then as I go along with my hospitality studies, then I did some training periods in different cities, and one in Nice, near Cannes-sur-Mer. And I did a 2 months training sessions. And then I discovered, you know, I was watching, when I was having my days off, I would go to cinema. And it was when you have this famous film, Karate Kid, that just showed up. And also movies like Ninja or whatever that was. But I was so eager watching these films. I was like, really, my desire for martial art was growing and growing and growing. And then I realized maybe actually I want to become an Aikido teacher. But that was inside me, is like a desire growing. So I thought, but you know, there was so much to learn. There was, you know, I was nowhere near. I was not a black belt. I didn't do any grading, but because I was finding it so good for me mentally, training and with other people. And I also like the fact when you're training with a partner, there's no sense of competition. You're training, you do a technique, and then you swap over, you receive a technique and so forth, and you change your partners. So there was a good atmosphere. We were training with respect, and I did like that. And then you train and you progress at your own pace, so you're not competing with anybody else. So I thought that was pretty good. And then I carried on with my studies, and I actually went back to Nantes because I did a trip to England for just a few months, and I just wanted to explore. And my English wasn't very good. But then I thought maybe I need to come back again to France and carry on my studies, because there was another master degree I could actually do. So I went back to France because I was actually based in Cambridge for a few months, and I was working in a restaurant. And my English wasn't, you know, great, but I was making some improvements. But then I was no training as well, as I was missing Aikido training. I was working flat out all the time. When you work in a restaurant, I was a waiter, and I was, you know, working long hours.
And the hours are really tough, aren't they, when you're in hospitality?
Well, yeah, and I didn't even know if there was an Aikido club in Cambridge. I didn't have any time. After 2 months, I felt, no, I can't do it. I can't do it. I need to go back to France. And I just decided to you know, carry on with my studies. So I moved back to Nantes, and then there was another sort of a school called Nicolas Appert, another hospitality management for master degree. And then I decided, because I had actually an accommodation in central town of Nantes, in the center of the city. My parents located, you know, a nice studio flat. So I was quite fortunate. And then around the area, it was right at the heart of Nantes, there was an Aikido dojo, and it was run by Philippe Guttard, who's a Shihan from Aikikai, and he teaches under Christian Tissier, the FFAAA. And then I saw him first time doing Aikido, and it was just phenomenal, because at the time there was like a massive jump from what I learned and what Philippe Guttard was doing. Everything was so fluid and dynamic, and my heart was just like, oh my gosh, this is really what I want to do. I was like falling in love even more. So, and I was training under, you know, under him for about a year, and then carried on. And then I decided after, a few months afterwards, actually, I want to go back to London, to England. So I went to London, and I was, getting myself quite strong to getting ready to discover a bit more England. And so I was, again, working in hospitality to start off with, because it's easier if you're French and you studied hospitality, you get a job pretty quickly. And I was working as a waiter again, and one waiter, and helping out in the restaurants, because obviously I was able to do more, but the language was a barrier. So I had to actually, work on my English more. So and then it was in a hotel that was located in Holborn, I think the Berkeley Hotel, if I remember well. And then I wanted to find another Aikido club that was located quite close, and it turned out that it was under Kanetsuka Sensei. Kanetsuka was teaching in Euston, which wasn't too far from Holborn.
Yeah.
So I was able to go there on foot, and during my breaks, go and practice. He was teaching into two dojos, one in UCL Sports Center, and there was a dojo next to the gym. And then there was also another dojo in Euston Square, which was in a dancing studio. I think it was Pineapple Dancing Studio building, and we had to lay all the mats. And so he was teaching, a few sessions during the week, and it was different. It was very different from what I had learned before, from what I learned from Philippe Guittard, dynamic, lots of things. With Kanetsuka, first thing that I was amazed was his flexibility. He was so flexible. He would do a lot of stretching to start off with at the beginning, and he put an emphasis on this. And then I later on discovered that he studied Yoshinkan Aikido. I did not know that before, but there were things that when you look at his footwork, there was sometimes a mix of Yoshinkan and Aikikai doing his teaching. But I was trying my hardest to understand and trying to, whenever he was doing techniques, like it would be Ikkyo, then 5 minutes later it would be Shihonage, then 5 minutes later it would be Iriminage, then it would be a different technique all the time. And so during a session, I felt, a bit disheartened, because I never felt I was able to learn the technique itself enough. We were moving on to too many techniques quickly. So that was his way of teaching. And then he would try and show us something that I did not understand. But, because when you've got beginner's eyes, what you're seeing the technique from the external shape. You're looking where the feet go, where the hand go. And he was trying to show the center, something from the hara, and this is how you do it. And he made it look effortless. It was just like so easy, and yet you're trying to do with somebody and it doesn't work. So you're trying to do your best. And then at one point I thought, someone suggested, if you want to move away from hospitality and do a bit of a different kind of work, you could actually work as a door supervisor. And I thought, really? Door supervisor in nightclub? And someone said, Nick, you're quite big and you do martial art. But I wasn't a martial art expert, I didn't see myself being like, I knew everything. I thought, well, firstly, I wanted to get out from this routine of this hotel, because they offered me a bed sit, if you like, within the hotel. And I wanted to step out and be more independent. And so, you needed a better job. So I was working as a bouncer. But before that, I had to actually do a course, because you need to be, now we're talking about SIA license, but it didn't exist then. It was Westminster badge. You needed a Westminster badge in order to work in Westminster area. So I was looking for where I could actually do the training. And then I bumped into David Rubens Sensei, who happened to have opened a dojo in Westhampton Square teaching Yoshinkan Aikido, which I never knew about. But he was a trainer to teach candidates like me to become door supervisors. So it was I think it was a 5 days course, quite intensive. You go through everything that they want you to be knowledgeable about, the law, and also the licensing, and premises when they serve alcohol, and you have to have a number of elementary information and knowledge before you could undertake this kind of job. And I think you also needed to do a first aid course, if I remember. You needed to be a first aider. So all of that was thrown into one course. And David Rubens then approached me and said, I teach Yoshinkan Aikido, because I said, I'm doing Aikido as well. With Kanetsuka Sensei. He said, oh, I know Kanetsuka Sensei. I said, look, if you want to come and practice Yoshinkan Aikido, at least try, you're more than welcome. So I realized that he actually came back from Japan, and he did the intensive course. I think it was like 4.5 years, and it was a Ushideshi training course, and it was like a very intensive, and I heard it was very, very difficult and tough to actually go through, because you train, I think, 6 days a week. So it's pretty hard and many hours. So you need to be physically quite fit. And so he just come back with a fresh mind. And so I joined his session, and my gosh, I was shocked because I didn't expect that experience. Because one thing I quite like about Yoshinkan Aikido compared to what I had learned, and this is a thing about martial arts, is when, especially Aikido, is every teacher has something to offer. And you can't be saying or critical of one martial arts. I don't think you can, because if you practice Aikido and you love Aikido, you understand the reason why the different types of what we call styles of Aikido. Even though I don't want to talk about styles, but you have to recognize there's a different form, different ways of doing things. So, well, maybe I should say different schools, because people have studied under Sensei different times in his life. But the Yoshinkan Aikido, I was really surprised about the focus on the kamae. They have a very strong kamae, and the stance is different from Aikikai stance, because the front foot is more open. But what I did like was the mental focus into the discipline. So you fall in, for example, you do a breakthrough, you need to get up quite quickly and be onto your kamae prompt, fast. So previously, you could fall and then get up at your own pace and get ready when you feel you're ready. So this is why I'm saying that was a shock to me, because then, David was like, get up. And it was like, at one point I felt I was like in the army. I've never been in the army, but it felt like very strict as such. And my mind was telling me at one point, Nick, it's either you say no, you give up and go back to Kanetsuka, or just stop doing Aikido. But there was something that David was offering, and something that was telling me, you need to stay, you need to learn, because that was that focus on the breakthroughs and the sharpness on the kamae. And it was like quite severe, in the sense that the training itself, it's quite good and intensive in a way. So you need to be sharp all the time. So it's a different type of training altogether. And David Rubens was putting his experience, sharing his experience, what he learned from Japan. And I remember somebody said to me, they actually said at first, they said, because the reason that the tuition was quite strict was apparently someone had said to David when he got back, said, we would love you to teach the same way as in Japan, as what you've learned in Yoshinkan Aikido.
Careful what you wish for, hey?
Yeah, so because maybe David was kinder or nicer, or maybe making it a bit easier, but I didn't see that side. So I came in when he was like really sharp. So that was like a bit of a shock. And so I stayed there, and I was practicing with David Rubens and did a lot of sessions. And obviously my eagerness was showing, whatever session I was able to go to, I would go to the sessions. And I got my Westminster badge, and so I began working in nightclubs. So I do remember the first nightclub was given a job, and it was a bit of a shock because at the time, talking about, I think it was in 1989 or 1990, something like this, if I'm right. I might be wrong with the timing, but when I used to work in hotels, I would be earning maybe 50, 60 pounds in a week.
Yeah.
But that was my money for the night.
Yeah.
Working as a door supervisor. So in one night, I was making that money in 1 week when I used to work as a waiter. So I was a bit, surprised about, wow, I think I can do well. I think I'll persevere and carry on working as a door supervisor. And I remember there was a woman who was the owner of the nightclub called Vogue on Water Street. Her name was Sally. And the first night, because, I was like, well, I've got a nice feature on my face, and, you work as a bouncer, and you have to wear a tuxedo.
Yeah. So
it was a bow tie, tuxedo. There was like a bit of a posh background. So I was looking quite good, So I think she liked me. So she asked for me to work at the front entrance of Vogue. And one more thing you might be saying as well, because people play music very loud in nightclubs. I wasn't wearing my hearing aids, and I would take them off.
Yeah,
I would have them in my pocket. The music is so loud, so people speak very loud, and also because I learned to lip read, so I was able to understand what they were saying. But I do remember that night when she came in, it was a Friday night, because she doesn't work on the other nights, but Friday nights. And she said, right, Nick, I want you to be at the door. And then let people through. So I was letting people through, but you let about 3 or 4 people in one go. And she was in charge of taking the money, because you had to pay to get in. So and Vogue was on the ground, on the basement. So right at the counter, she was taking the money from the people. And there was an argument. There was a chap who said, no, I'm not paying any money. I'm not paying any of that. And she was saying to me, Nick, get him out. Get him out. So I said, yeah, of course. I just go straight. I said, sir, you need to go. And she said, no, I'm not leaving. Don't touch me. Don't touch me. So I remember the first thing that came into mind, because his arm was just like that. Thank you. I got him on the thank you pin. And the man was like, ah. I said, let's move now. Let's go up. And Sally's eyes went like this. So she was saying to her head doorman, I want Nick at the front door permanently. So I kind of felt, I was more or less secure in that job. So that's how I kind of work. And there would be a number of evenings where there would be a number of fights, and the fights would take place, but you had to be, firstly, being a door supervisor at the front door, you had to select the people. So we were told couples, but no group of men, and make sure, firstly, there was a chap whom I was learning from, and the guy was used to be a door supervisor for many, many years.
Yeah.
And he would look at people, he would analyze, and if you find something is off with this person, so you're trusting your sixth sense, actually. Yeah. It's a bit like same in the martial arts, when you kind of see the body language and everything. So I was learning enormously a lot from these guys, and he was able to pre-select the people. So we didn't have that much fight in the basement, because he did a good selection from start. But when there was a fight, the DJ would announce, Mr. Jones on the dance floor, Mr. Jones on the dance floor. That's a code. Yeah. There's a fight on the dance floor. So I had to rush down and go straight. And I remember the first time the adrenaline rush goes into your body. And you're thinking, my gosh, and you go straight in, and there was guys fighting with bottles, and you need to separate them, and you do what you have to do. But the good thing about when you work as a bouncer, you're not working, it's not like watching a film, Woodhouse with Patrick Swayze, and doing the things that, you come here and bang, you knock the person down, because they wouldn't allow that.
Yeah.
You just simply separate the parties and just get troublemakers out of premises. But what you don't want to do is get them back together outside on the same street, so they carry on fighting.
Yeah.
So you have to do a selection, get the first person out through the front door, and you've got the back door. And so at least, you know, they're not going to carry on fighting for some time, or unless they meet each other again. But mainly people were getting drunk, and sometimes, or it was a case of somebody finding out that the other guy was seeing his girlfriend, and all being found out and all that. So, or somebody's pushing another person, and you know, it's just kind of aggravation. And so Aikido was quite good because you often grab someone's arm and you got a good grip. But what I discovered also is that some of the door supervisors did not have any martial art experience whatsoever. So sometimes I felt they were invading the other person, or maybe too aggressive because they were invading their space. But I was very aware and very conscious of that. And also, you kind of retain your space all the time. And when you grab the persons, you're not facing the person face to face. You're walking side by side, so they can't be angry with you because they're not seeing you.
Yeah.
So you say, let's go and have a, you know, we need to escort you outside the premises. You cannot stay here. So there was kind of, you know, that learning. And sometimes people were very strong and they would resist. So you had a number of pins. You could do that. That kind of, actually, the very famous Yoshinkan pin is a bit like a Nikyo, but you bring the elbow down to your chest and you put pressure on the knuckles down.
Yeah, and a bit like the old please come along.
Yes,
yeah.
But it's effective to a point. But what I had realized is that when people drink alcohol, they smoke and they take drugs, sometimes they feel no pain. So you end up hurting them more, and they don't even know that you're hurting them more. So that was quite a bit of a shock, because you find that the pin is not working, they're still resisting you.
Yeah.
And maybe you hurt them badly, you don't know that, but they carry on fighting. So there were times I would be trying to get people out of the premises, and there were times that when I would do a technique, it didn't work. And also, when you're in a nightclub, it's not like in a dojo, flat ground. You might have some steps. You might have no space whatsoever because you still have a lot of people around you. When you're trying to get someone out of the premises and the person is in the basement and you've got the stairs to take them up, that's a really big challenge. And when you do that, you realize after that, you know, you get somebody out of the premises, and then if you're being called for another fight, the energy and the adrenaline runs down very, very quickly. You need to have something, you know, like drinking some orange juice or water, but you need to really to keep up, because the energy level can drop. And I discovered a few things. Is that firstly, you know, for me, the Aikido training gave me that focus. It's a mental focus. So it's not exactly, you don't need to be strong, muscular, and all this. There was a chap who was a professional bodybuilder, and he looked really big.
Yeah.
He was amazing. I mean, you know, his muscles, biceps and all that. And he was so, and I said, well, how can you get your muscles so stiff all the time? They're stiff all the time. I said, it's not possible. I knew he was on something. And he told me, because his jaws were a bit square, square than normal. His neck was quite big. And I said, well, he admitted to me he was taking steroids. And they do take steroids in the back, on their buttock, so to speak. So one thing he said to me, do not, you know, one thing I mustn't get is being hit on my back, because it will be so sore on my buttock. It would be so sore, I wouldn't be able to stand up again, because I don't know, they must have had lots of injections, because his body was massive. But he was useless. He couldn't do anything, because the moment we had a bit of a fight, we had to go and get a person, because his body was too big. And the oxygen level and the heart beating, he was almost passing out. He couldn't do it.
Yeah.
He was really struggling. So we had to work as a team. So felt, maybe we can get him to the front door to impress people. He's a big guy, but we can't use him for fights because he's useless. And he knew he was being useless. But at the same time, I had to, people like Sadie always asking me, Nick, go and get him. But because she saw me doing the Sankyo, being so effective, but sometimes it doesn't always work because so-and-so is resisting, but you also hurt yourself. And there are times when you get involved in a fight, and if inevitably you're surrounded, you're just one doorman, and there's 3 guys trying to fight with you, well, you do what you can. And you can't really do Aikido, like Aikido technique and being very nice. Actually, it's much faster.
Yeah.
You step out of the way and it's a punch. This is, I think, this different level that people sometimes don't understand, or they have a misunderstanding of Aikido, because Aikido is very effective. What we're learning outside in the dojo is very different. We condition our mind, we look at the technique and aspect of that, but outside, everything is much shorter, much quicker, much faster. And so I learned all of that. And when you hit somebody with a fist on and you hurt the person, he's on the floor, fine. But when you're the next day, you're going back to work, your fist hurts.
Yeah.
You can't use it again.
Yeah.
And this is the pain you realize. And when you're working as a door supervisor, you have to sort of find another way. And the other way was open palm.
Yeah.
And that was very effective. It doesn't hurt as much. So when people say, oh, I would never strike with a blade, but actually it makes sense. But this is another aspect. But you learn this thing because when you do that all the time, you realize you can't all the time hit the fist on and you get bruised. And if it hurts, and really badly. And for a few days, you feel the pain.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. Whenever I first sort of speak to or talk to beginner students and say, forget what you've seen in the movies. If you hit something hard with something hard, they both hurt. You can't avoid that.
Exactly. So I had moved on, and I went from one nightclub to another nightclub. So I was getting a bit more money and so forth. And but the entire sort of dynamic was the same. People being lousy, getting drunk, or this and that. And sometimes the trouble you get is there's only one door supervisor at the front door, and you've got 5 guys and they want to go in, and you say, sorry, chap, not tonight. But they are seeing that you're just one door supervisor and there's another one downstairs, because sometimes the nightclub might just say, which was the case for Los Locos, a nightclub I used to work in Soho, and Covent Garden, because there were 2 nightclubs, the same branch. And sometimes the guys would challenge you because they see there's just one doorman. So you had your earpiece and you call your mate to come upstairs. But sometimes by the time the guy goes upstairs, it's too late. So you would know you need to be in a position where you never put yourself, in a vulnerable position, basically. So always have your back covered. That's the one thing. So we used to work as a door supervisor. And what I found interesting is working as a door supervisor with colleagues for a number of years. I've not been in the army, but I have. I can feel the feeling is quite the same, because you're doing a job that is quite risky. The relationship you have with your colleague will be a long-term relationship. Right now, I'm not working as a door supervisor. I used to do that, but I still have a number of friends who used to work as a door supervisor, and we still get on like very good friends. We remember the old times, and we get on together. And but because he was looking after my back and I was looking after his back.
Yeah.
So I made sure he was safe. He made sure I was safe. And that's you create a bond. It's a completely different. It's not like working in an office and colleagues. No one is going to watch your back. It's not like that.
Well, it's the opposite, isn't it? Sometimes.
Completely. So, but then there were times when I was attacked with a knife once, and actually twice. But the first time it was pretty quick. Very, very fast. Somebody pulled a knife on me, and there was a guy, it was at a sports cafe, a chap who, for some reason, refused to pay. I don't know what it was, but he became angry with the head doorman, and he was having a fight. And this is probably a stupid thing, really, because the sports cafe had these kitchen knives, but a steak knife and sharp knife. And this is where he used that knife quickly to stab me. And because I was asked to a town as a backup to a town, but I wasn't trying to go in to intimidate. But he became very, very volatile at the time, and very quick. He barged into me. I was like, "Whoa, what's happened?" And he pulled a knife straight, and my instinct was just hearing me. It was just avoiding the knife and going right behind. And I remember I squeezed his balls very hard. That was the first instinct, because I had my hand down there and I squeezed his balls. And the other hand, I was against the table, and I said, "Now you drop the knife. You drop the knife." And then my head doorman was putting him on the ground, and then everybody was, the waiters were calling the police, and the police arrived, and he said, "This is what's happened." And he got arrested for this. But the reason I mentioned this is that it made me think, is it really worth doing that job?
Yeah.
Because after so many years, I felt something's going to happen. But Aikido training has given me the ability to react quick. And I wasn't even thinking. It became quite natural to step offline, to go quick in. And I saw that taking his balance off works. And I was really surprised by that. Yeah. And so the training has given me that extra edge. And there was a time, actually, because I didn't mention before, before you might be saying, "Well, was I still practicing with David Rubens?" When I was doing door work at this place called Vogue and Soho as well, there were a number of instances and things that I felt wasn't sure if the Aikido was being effective enough. Yeah. And it's no critic to Yoshinkan Aikido, because it's not the martial art itself, it's individual. And at that time, I felt that I didn't have enough knowledge to be sort of saying, I can get out of the situation with my Aikido. I felt I needed to learn more to be feeling more confident. So there was a crossing point where I felt, well, what do I do? Because I really, really love Aikido. And I was fairly close to think, what do I do? Do I stop? Do I quit and look for something else? And then I went into a bookshop, and I didn't even know who Sato Sensei was. And you see books in the back. Yeah. And there was one of his books like this, one of the 5 volumes. And I looked at one of the books where they showed weapons. And Mohihibo Sato Sensei was saying that he practiced under O-sensei for 24 years in Iwama. And I didn't know that. I didn't even know any of that. I was so really interested, intrigued, if I would say. And the book showed enormous amount of techniques with weapons that we don't explore very much with Aikikai or with Yoshinkan Aikido. And because it's a different type of learning. And Mohihibo Sato Sensei was the person who created the Bukiwaza system in place, because O-sensei was not teaching the Bukiwaza, putting the Kumitachi or the Kumijo or the 20 Josuburi or the 7 Kensuburi. He didn't do any of that. He was just so far in his own expertise and in high level that everything was just natural to him. So I think in this book, I was so amazed by the number of things that I've never seen. And I thought, wow. And then there was a scripture in that book where Mohihibo Sato Sensei said, if you really want to learn Aikido deeply and understand Aikido as it should be, you need to learn weapons, and you will understand Aikido better. So it was a phrase like that sort of made me think, you need to learn the weapons. So I decided to look for an Iwama club. So I found one in Sok Nguyen Tan called the London Aikido Club, where Andy Hathaway Sensei teaches. And then I was in this club for about 25 years, learning all these weapons and going through. But very quickly, when I changed from Yoshinkan Aikido to Iwama Aikido, I saw major differences, major things that really helped me when I was working as a door supervisor, because I was still working as a door supervisor. And there were things that work way better already because the method was different. And it was very interesting because another thing that my learning experience quite different because I did Aikikai, then Yoshinkan.
Yeah.
So I had to learn from scratch. And then when I went to Iwama, I remember the first time I went to Andy Hathaway's dojo, I was doing this Yoshinkan stance, thinking, you know, I know Aikido, but the Yoshinkan stance way. And I think there were some eyes thinking, what is he doing? This is not Iwama Aikido, but, you know, I was just obviously new to Iwama Aikido, and I realized very quickly that the footwork or anything I had learned, I had to be changed all over again because it wouldn't work. It's not the same sort of feeling, the training. So
and back then, of course, as well, there wasn't kind of YouTube and things. So people now can kind of very quickly see different styles, can't they? They can see different kami, they can see different movement.
Yes.
But back then,
completely.
if you were training in your same club for 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years, and that's all you'd seen, if you then go to see another school or another style,
absolutely,
it looks so different.
Absolutely. I mean, my experience, you see, why did I change different clubs? I changed different clubs because my job as a door supervisor made me realize a few things that kind of felt, well, I've been through that. That didn't work. And, you know, you sort of see the reality of things that sometimes you sit back and I was so eager in wanting to learn the best Aikido I could learn. Aikido that would be effective. That's what I was looking for. There must be a way to make Aikido work. So I was really focused on that. And the Iwama Aikido has a marvelous spectrum of weapons, but we're not, you know, people think sometimes they think we do too much weapons and then we're not doing taijutsu, but it's like not true. Because everything is actually 50-50, if you like.
Yeah.
And it's a bit of a trio because you've got the Jo, the Ken, and Taijutsu.
Yeah.
And when you're learning the Jo, which is the staff, the Ken, which is the wooden sword, and Taijutsu, all of these learnings are done together as they are working hands in hands. So you're not learning Boken as a separate art, like Aikido, for example. And I think what I see from my personal perspective is I have seen a number of Aikikai instructors. They learn Aikido, Kendo, or other forms and like Jojutsu, and they're trying to combine them to bring them in to the Aikido teaching. But a number of things is not quite the same because Aikido is a separate art, so it can be taught just on its own. But the Iwama Aikido is very unique because the Ken that you're learning is a conditioned training to enforce or to build your hips power, to actually build good posture, to get your good stance with the footwork. That is exactly the same for Taijutsu. And the same with the Jo. So they're not taught separately, where you find that the footwork with when you're holding a weapon will differ. And they are all the same. So what happens is the Ken focuses on your center, the hara. So the hips part, developing the hip part, but it also focuses on the kokyu feeling that we see in taijutsu techniques, for example. And it also enforces the body posture, the good body posture, because everything that is taught by Morihiro Sato Sensei is he put a system to translate what O-sensei was doing, but to give us a simpler language for us to pick up and to work on our basic. So it's a bit like he's given us an alphabet. The alphabet, and then now you need to know each of these letters correctly. The same with the jaw. You have the 20 jaw suburi, you have a 13 jaw kata, the 31 jaw kata. You've got the 6 jaw kata. You've also got the this will be like a personal solo training, which actually fantastic in a way, because when we had the pandemic, we could still carry on with the training. You could still do those solo training, but these solo trainings that Mohi Hirosato Sensei put together was necessary for us to pick up on a good base and have a good understanding how it is done, so that we can do pair practice. So you can practice with someone holding a ken. So we have a kumitachi, so ken and ken, or ken wase. You've got different types of training. Or you also have a kumijo with another partner holding a jaw, and you hold a jaw. So very, very precise, but you cannot understand the kumitachi nor the kumijo if you have never done jaw suburi or ken suburi. So you need to practice these first, because you have specific footwork for each one of them. So it's a very
common taijutsu, presumably.
Completely. And when you're practicing each of them, it's what I find, the more I am into it, the more I discover that you're learning your body posture. You're learning also to empty your mind. You're learning to be ready right now. So you're not thinking of your past, i.e. your mistakes you've done. So you verify, did my footwork, was it correct, and so forth. So you look down on your feet. You're not thinking of the future. You absolutely absorb in that moment of now and emptiness. And it's really interesting, because this focus, I find it so helping, because you're not thinking of anything else, just complete into that moment. And the feeling is also comes along. It's not just a physical body shape, but there's a feeling that builds inside us. So your body is positioning in certain your hips turn in certain way, and so forth. So, and what happens is you can't get that feeling without checking on your feet. Your body would know if that feeling is correct. So when you have the Ken no Kame, you have a certain feeling. When you've got Jo no Kame, you have a different feeling. And Jo Suki Kame is different. And you've got a positioning more like Ito Hemi. And Ito Hemi is a more, you put your shoulder forward more. So there are different methods that you put together in order to practice further and build your Aikido to make it stronger. And that's, for a long time, I thought, actually, when you practice Aikido, I actually wrongly believe that when you practice in Aikido, it's like you're waiting for someone to attack you and you defend yourself. But it made me realize that that was completely wrong, what I was thinking. Is your position is affecting your attacker's mind, if you like, or influencing him or her to attack you specifically in certain areas, because the body positioning is indicating a certain opening. And that's like you're putting a bait in front of the attacker. And you create that opening to offer that bait. So he's going to take it or not. And that's how you practice Aikido. And therefore, Aikido is not defensive. Aikido is more offensive than we think. You're taking charge right from the start. You don't wait for the attacker to come in. It's too late. When the attacker has come in, it's because you've invited him. You exactly wanted him to do that.
And created the conditions.
Ready. Exactly. And there's a body preparing, and you're taking advantage of a situation, controlling your partner right from the start. And one thing that I really find interesting is my method of learning. Because of when I used to work as a door supervisor, I actually saw very quickly when you're taking someone off balance, they can't fight. and your brain is not conditioned for you to be able to carry on fighting. You could be the best boxer in the world, the best kick fighter. If your balance is taken, you cannot fight in that moment. And so Aikido, if you can grab and see someone's balance from start to finish, then I think you have a very powerful technique.
Yeah.
But you got to find that momentum. And when I say that momentum, is the owase, the blending. So you need to find a way where you step in not too early, because if you step in too early, the attacker can change the attack and redirect.
Yeah.
You have to be able to move in when the attack is already too far committed. When it's too far committed, he's stuck in that moment.
Yeah.
And then you have the ability, if you move in at the same time, you have taken that momentum, and to take his balance from at that moment, and you carry on doing the technique until you control the person to the ground.
Yeah.
Now, there are different techniques like that, because you can control the person to the ground with Ikkyo, Nikkyo, Sankyo, all these techniques. These are the basic techniques. But more so is when you practice in Iwama Aikido, for example, is the basic techniques that we learn, for example, the Tai no Henko, Morite Dori. What I think people, my understanding of it is that we're not really practicing just with the person that we're facing with. Because he's the least of our problem, or she's the least of our problem. The bigger problem is what you can't see behind you. Who is behind you?
Yeah.
So when you have this turning and you see the other side, that makes it very powerful. That's what Iwama Aikido teaches you, one against many. So you never stay on the same spot. You always move away from that spot. And also the beauty of it is when you're moving, you're always moving in harmony. You're always moving in a correct positioning with your feet. It's a bit like if you're holding a cane or a jaw. So you're always, if you like, ready to do a technique. So you never come to a point where you've moved and you cross your legs, or you're in a position that feels awkward.
Yeah.
So the Iwama Aikido has a method to show you one against many, and it's pronounced right from the start with Tai no Henko. And a lot of times people thinking, well, he's holding me, he's the problem, I'm going to try and overcome the person, my partner. And they find that it's difficult because they put more power. And I always say in my teaching, when you're practicing with your partner, if you go, obviously one of the characteristics we have in Iwama is we have the Kihon. Kihon is a basic form where we allow the partner to grip you, strong grip. So obviously there's things that if you cannot move, then Uke, who grips you too strong, should release a little bit to allow you to practice with a lesser strength.
Yeah.
It's a bit like going to the gym. It would be unfair to say, well, you're going to start with 50 kilos and you can't do the 50 kilos. It's not possible.
Yeah.
You need to go first slowly with a smaller weight, and you build this up bit by bit. So we have to practice like that. But what I said to my students is, when you practice, always practice that relax, allow the person, no contraction in your body. So when I mean no contraction, you shouldn't be putting any form of tension in your arms. And I never got the opportunity to train with Sato Sensei, Morihiro Sato Sensei. I did join a seminar back in 2000 in Paris. He came, and it was amazing. I was trying my hardest to be Uke for him, but I was never selected. But the testimony I heard from many people, they were always saying, I asked the question, how was it when you helped Morihiro Sato Sensei? He said it was just like holding marshmallow. It was so soft.
Yeah.
And they were shocked by that, because they never felt like he was putting the power, physical power, strength. So that kind of stayed in my head all the time. So when I practice Aikido, I'm also practicing as relaxed as I can, but apply kokyu, pure kokyu, turn at the right moment, toe to toe, turn with the hips, but also one against many. But when you turn in and you're not focusing on the person in front of you, you're more focused on what's happening behind, you realize you overcome the person that's faced you much easier, because he's not a problem. Your mindset is not on him, it's more on the back, and your technique works better. So it's that mindset that you discover. And the same with Moritedori Kokyuho and many techniques. So another reason that I really love about Aikido is that you continuously learn. It never stops. So I love the fact that, you know, when I'm going to practice or teach, even as a teacher, you learn. You continuously learn. There are things that you will be speaking openly to your students and you demonstrate, and suddenly things that you knew inside you, but because you spoke those words out, it makes sense. And
the understanding changes, doesn't it?
Yeah, it comes in as digestion. It's like, yes, now, yes, I see. And then you realize more. And when we practice weapons, because I mentioned earlier, when I have these first weapons I bought when I was in France, they were like from a shop. I think there was a martial art Chinese shop that had Joe and the Bokken, like £15 each or something like that. The Bokken from Iwama and the Joe cost at least £60. They're much heavier. And when you practice with these heavier weapons, if you put in contraction on your arms and you apply the wrong strength, very quickly you'll find you cannot do the movement properly, and it will hurt. You'll be hurt on your shoulders, and you feel very uncomfortable. So it kind of forces you to find another strength. And also, when you get older, you don't have the same physical strength. You find that, you know, I'm getting older now, and I've got to stay in shape, but do best I can. But when you practice more relaxed. But there's something else that comes to build, is that there's a centerness that comes in. We call the hara from the hips, and there's that physical cup. There's also an internal feeling to it that is very, very strong, and it's really the kokyu element that applies. And when we do with weapons, and this is why the emphasis of Iwama of putting weapons training as equally important as taijutsu, is because when you don't hold your weapons and you're practicing taijutsu, you kind of have to think you're practicing weapons with your partner. There's a real relationship. It's the same when you do the weapons. You have to find that taijutsu connection. So when you do the weapons cuts, you don't actually think, I'm just doing a mere cut or just do a thrust. It's more about, how does my body turn? How does my body move? And then there's also the other aspect, is that, do you actually put your feet first forward and then you thrust? So you place your feet if you're comfortable and you thrust. So you're doing 1 + 1. And that is wrong, because you're slow in time. You're adding 1 and another movement, that's 2 seconds. I believe it should be 1 as 1 second. Step and the thrust as 1. But this can only happen if you do it from the hips. So you change your mindset. You're actually not thinking, I'm stepping forward and I'm thrusting. Your hips move. So your hips make your feet go forward. Your thrust go with the hips feeling, and your hands being projected forward and with a kokyu feeling. And so when you do that movement as 1 and you're practicing with a partner, then you have this element of doing the technique as 1. And it shouldn't be you're practicing a technique and you see this movement is 1, 2, 3. It shouldn't be like that. Another thing that sometimes, my experience watching the schools in Iwama, you see the Kihon is great. You need a strong basic Kihon. For the beginners, you have to be teaching step by step. So you have to have 1, 2, 3, so forth. But people need to know that this is not the end goal. You shouldn't be thinking 1, 2, and 3, but it's more as continuously. So it's 1 all together, and you kind of merge 1, 2, 3 as 1.
It's the flow at that point, isn't it?
Completely fluid. Aikikai has that fluidity. They have that beautiful fluidity. You can see the doshu, and when they do the Aikido, is beautiful because they've got that fluidity going along together. So if we can merge Iwama and Aikikai together, I think we have, in my opinion, something quite good. Because, you know, Iwama is also very, very strong. Very, don't get me wrong, it's very powerful. You get all the hips feeling and everything. And what we have also is the teaching methods is so detailed that because of the level of information that we learn from the weapons, and when we pick up a technique, for example, Iriminage, we have various forms of Iriminage, various possibilities, the very detailed forms of Iriminage. You've got the Kihon, but you've got the Owase. There's different methods. You've got the Iriminage where you step to the back, you turn and you go forward, or you go straight forward by stepping to the side or more advanced, or you do the turning, or you simply do the atemi onto the person. So there's different levels. The Aikikai
atemi in Aikido. Oh, you're about to surprise all the people listening.
Yeah, but you see, the Aikikai has one form of Iriminage. They may have different forms, but it isn't the same as the Iriminage that I can understand with Iwama. The Iriminage with Iwama is very clear in my view. It's always one against many. So if you're going to do a turn, you're doing a turn because you're looking who's next.
Scanning.
Where you are in that. So it's that level of details.
Yeah.
The Aikikai has the Iriminage sometimes different, but they focus on their partner. That's the difference.
Yeah.
So it's not that it is wrong. It's a different method. It's a different way.
Yeah.
But I think because when you do the weapons and you do all these things learning, you immediately see that multiple attackers situation.
Yeah.
So that kind of shows, you know, this different level of what Iwama can offer altogether. And the Kihon holding very strong is very good because it allows the person to actually feel if you're going to be using your strength, it's not going to work. Yeah. You're going to be blocked. Yeah. Sometimes it can be very frustrating for students because they may find that they can't get it, they can't find it. But it does take a long time to find this. This is a problem about Aikido. It will take a long time before you discover.
Yeah.
You could be doing karate. You could be very good in a short space of time, because with karate you learn pretty much kata yourself, your own strength. But Aikido is longer because you're training with different people, and you need to do the techniques with someone.
Yeah.
And when you practice with someone, you're practicing with people, different shapes. Some will be tall, small, flexible, not flexible, rigid. You know, all kind of people, and you've got to find that blending somehow, and that's what makes it very hard. But at the same time, what I find fantastic about Aikido is that you develop sensitivity. So you can feel the persons, you can feel when they grip wherever she's going. If they're pulling, pushing, you're not resisting that, but you're going with it.
Yeah.
And the other thing that you're doing with Aikido is that you're not thinking in your brain, because you're thinking here first. Obviously, as a beginner, you see everything fit and all this. Then you start digesting. So when it gets into your throat, it starts to sink in.
Yeah.
You're still doing the thinking. It's not quite there. And when it gets into your tummy, it's in your hara, and it's there forever.
Yeah.
Because the feeling is in your body. So in other words, when you have that feeling, your technique is more body responding than your brain taking charge.
Yeah.
It's the body is the brain, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So
yeah, absolutely.
The body has decided already. You're into that position and you accept it. But it takes a long, long time.
Yeah. I mean, just taking all of that together then. So you've been through, you've experienced and studied Aikikai, Yoshinkan, Iwama, you know, you've been across this range. So when you look at your dojo, so Aspire Aikido in London. What's that mix look like?
Well, what I believe, okay, I don't believe it would be right to mix it, because Iwama is in my heart, and to me it's very clear. What I believe firmly, and I've always said it, is teach as faithfully as possible what these techniques were meant to be. Because I think sometimes when you learn in a martial arts and you can't do some technique very well, there's a tendency to think you're going to dismiss it. And you say, well, that technique doesn't work. So you're going to be adjusting, or you're going to be adding something that would work for you. And so you create what I would call hybrid martial arts.
Yeah.
You bring something that works for you, you bring this and you bring that. My motivation, real motivation from my heart, is to continue this legacy, to teach as faithfully as possible Iwama Aikido as it was taught, but not to just teach just the basics, if that makes sense. Because the basics are very strong. You need to teach the basics, but to actually push it a little bit further, in a sense that there is an instructor named Said Seba Sensei, whom I talk a lot, and I share many videos on the Facebook group, the Aspire Aikido London Facebook group. And I met him recently in Spain, and it's the reason I actually spotted him is that during pandemic, this is what happens. You can't train, you can't do anything, and you're looking at videos first. You try to spend the evening watching videos, and I first saw some videos about him, and there's things I've never seen before, and he was bringing something new, and yet he's teaching Aikido, Iwama Aikido, just the way it should be taught, but he's adding something extra. So that is, to me, the right way to do it. And we had long discussions together. We were chatting for a long while, because you speak French and I speak French, so we can't speak English, but obviously we had a very long conversation, and he gave me his understanding deeper, and he actually said to me quite something that will always stay with me. He says, Nick, the universe is in constant movement. It's never in the same place. If you think about it, the earth rotating, yes, but what we have its laws, we have a sun, the earth rotating around the sun, but all these rotations don't happen in the same place. All of that is moving, we're moving. So the reason he was saying this to me, he was just explaining that Aikido should be the same. It should also move forward. It moves with where things are going. So not saying that you read off the basics, no, the basic is so good. It's like saying, oh, we're now going to change the law. The sun is not at the center, and we're going to change everything. It wouldn't work. So you keep those principles. So you keep the same principles, but you push yourself to do something different. So